the committee to order and start out by recognizing Josh Waller, our Director of Policy and Government Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Snipes, congratulations. Madam Chair, congratulations on a new term. Members of the committee, full board, thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. We're 12 days out from the end of the federal fiscal year. I hope everyone's got your plans ready for federal fiscal New Year's Eve. Hopefully it's something exciting when that clock ticks. And well, let's not get ahead of ourselves on that one. But we will talk about that. So we'll definitely cover the state of play on funding. But before we do that, I want to do a quick just recap of the authorization bills and the state of authorization bills by the modes: highways, transit, rail, aviation, and water. So here's a lengthy but good comprehensive definition of what we mean when we say authorization. And that's basically just a statute that allows a federal agency to do something. It gives it the authority to act. It creates an agency. I'm not going to read the whole definition at you, but it creates an agency. It sets up programs, projects, and then it has to be renewed from time to time. So the one that we're all the most familiar with that gets a lot of discussion here that authorizes most of US DOT is what we call today, its current name is the IIJA, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or also BILL. Now we are now in the third year of that authorization, so in 2 years it's going to come due. So this next Congress, once elected, will really be tasked with pulling that authorization together. As you'll notice, the previous authorization was called the FAST Act. And when it expired in 2020, there was about a 1-year period where they just extended the FAST Act until they were able to resolve the IIJA and come to terms with it. So you would see they're usually 5-year bills. So the next 5-year period, they're on the screen again, contingent on any extensions that may occur. The next one that I'll talk about a little bit in the next slide in more detail is the Federal Aviation Administration. So their standalone authorization, also a 5-year authorization that was signed this year after a few months, a 6-7 month extension. Then one other I'm going to talk on about with respect to the WRDA bill, the Water Resources Development Act, and it's important for the ports. That's the bill that authorizes new projects dealing with rivers and ports. So there's a few highlights from that. So with the FAA, it was signed into law on May the 16th. It included a significant increase in the amount of formula funds that go back to airports to the AIP. It also included an increase in the amount of funds in the baseline amount that goes to commercial airports from 1 million to 1.3. And then the pot of money that goes back to general aviation airports was increased as a percentage of the allocation, the apportionment that comes to the states, from 20% to 25%. Next is the Water Resources Development Act. As mentioned, the ports, you've probably seen some headlines, is looking to explore further dredging of the harbor. To do that, for the Army Corps of Engineers to be able to do that, it requires an authorization in law. So the WRDA bill would be where that would happen. The House passed its version on July 22nd. It includes some pretty extensive language allowing for a study of additional deepening of the Port of Savannah. It also provided a little bit more flexibility around beginning pre-construction activities. The Senate version passed its version on August the 1st. It does authorize a study, but a little bit less extensive in how much can be done. Now they'll have to, between the House and Senate, they'll have to reconcile those differences and come up with some final language, which we will see and see where they land. So from authorization to appropriation, and what's the old saying, the more things change, the more they say the same. So headline from last week, headline from earlier this year, headline from last year, and what the heck, headline from 10 years ago. This time of year, the normal process is continuing resolutions until they get to a resolution and a full appropriation. So as a reminder, okay, what's regular order supposed to look like? Here's a fun little, I'm just a bill guy with the 12 different appropriations bills. So normal order, at the beginning of the calendar year, the president proposes a budget. Congress takes that general document and is supposed to adopt between it 2 joint budget resolutions, adopting sort of the top line number for how much the Congress will spend. Then the work is supposed to go to the 12 subcommittees of each chamber's appropriations committee, which are represented by each of those boxes, and each of them produce a bill. Transportation is lumped in with housing and urban development, and so that's the bill that traditionally, under normal order, our funding would flow through. But
Explain that, how that works. You've got housing and urban and transportation, one.
Correct.
Package.
Correct, and so then like Department of Agriculture is in a separate bill, Department of Defense, energy and water, when we talk about those port projects and water projects are in those bills. It's just the way administratively the committee divides up the work and who's responsible in developing the expertise and funding those agencies. But that's normal order. They are supposed to pass 12 bills out of the House, 12 bills out of the Senate, reconcile those differences, and send those 12 bills to the President for signature. In the 40, 50 years of the Congressional Budget Act that spells that out, it hasn't quite worked out that way. And so where we are today is, of the 12 bills, the House has passed 5 of them, and it's September the 18th, and the Senate's passed 0. Both the House and Senate Appropriations Committee have passed out the T-HUD bill, the Transportation HUD bill, but it's just passed committee, not the full chamber. So now we're in the continuing resolution discussion. Have any of you seen, again, those headlines talking about potential shutdown and this and that? The 2 scenarios are, one, the House has proposed, and they are slated to vote on it today at around 5 o'clock, I believe, 5 or 6 o'clock, a 6-month extension of government funding going until like March the 28th. They're looking to pair that with some election legislation. There's different opinions of whether they'll be successful or not this evening, and we'll see. The Senate and others have been more focused on a mid-December date for the continuing resolution. And so trying to figure out, so that's going to mid-December. Before we talked about potential scenarios and likelihood based off of, the last 5 years, historically under a CR, we get a pro rata share. Now, granted, we have the Highway Trust Fund, and it's theoretically guaranteed funding, but the Appropriations Act gives Federal Highway the ability to give us the cash that they promised. So an appropriations is important to the Highway Trust Fund for that purpose. So we get, under a CR, a daily pro rata share where they take the total amount we were supposed to get in the fiscal year, divide it by 365 to the daily rate, times the number of days in the continuing resolution. However, an important thing to know about that numerator, that top line total, it's based off of, because the continuing resolution is just an extension of the prior year's funding, it does not include the inflation adjustment that would have come as a result of the IIJA. Each year, the IIJA provided about a 2% increase funding to the states. So that is not incorporated into the CR. It will be retroactive when you have an omnibus or a long-term funding, but during the CR, you're operating at less money on that pro rata share. So here is the congressional calendar. And so there's a vote today. You can see that the House and Senate have 7 legislative days until the fiscal new year, and then they're out for October. So apparently, I saw on Facebook there's apparently an election. I don't know if anyone's, is that true?
Rumor has it.
Rumor has it that there's an election. So that might be why Congress isn't in for October. So, all right, looks like I have the election noted on there. So then they're back in mid-November, and then Thanksgiving break, and then the first 3 weeks of December. So that is the working period that you have for the Congress. One way to maybe figure out, have your crystal ball, is look at the past. So this shows the last 5 fiscal years of, the timelines. So in 2024, the current fiscal year we're in, we didn't get full funding until March the 9th, and there were 3 CRs. So one of the things I want to note at this point is, typically because of the way the state budget works and the way state funds match federal funds, and our ability to use state budget capacity up to a point to kind of pre-fund through advanced construction federal funds, we can usually weather, when we're getting into October, November, December with CRs, you usually don't hear much from us of concern yet about its impact on projects. Once you get into January, February, just the nature of things, we begin to run out of the headroom of using budget capacity to front the feds. And so typically, it's good to see these things resolved by December. I will note, if you look at this chart, 2023 and 2021, those were also election years, 23 being a midterm, and 21 being a presidential. In both of those scenarios, they had full funding in place by the end of December, with the first continuing resolution being early to mid-December. So while no one's crystal ball is perfect, I definitely don't have a perfect one. This at least provides us some sense of, okay, well, the last 5 years, you're looking at sometime between December and March. There's some precedent in election years for it being December, which is the bill that the Senate's talking about.
What is, under the continuing resolution, what are the numbers for, 1, 2, 3?
Those are the numbers of CRs. So you had 1, 2, 3, so fiscal year 24 was 3 CRs, 3 CRs in 23, and then 21, they had several short-term extensions.
Josh, the highway trust fund, we pay into that every month, is that not correct? Federal taxes on.
The federal government collects revenue from at the terminal rack for federal taxes each. I guess it'd probably be a monthly.
I don't know what Georgia sends a year up there, but if that's factored in to what they so-called promise, because these other highway funds that they appropriate, you know, they come in the way of grants and other things, you know, back to states. You know, it's still, but the highway trust fund is a little bit different because we are supposed to get back a certain number of what we pay in, but we're either a donor state, you know, where we maybe get 90% or whatever.
So yeah, you raise a good point. It's changed. Some of the fundamentals have changed in the last 2 or 3 authorization cycles. When the Federal Highway Trust Fund was able to collect enough revenue from each state, from gas sales in each state, to cover the whole program, Georgia and other states fell into the category of what you call a donor state, in that they paid more into the system than necessarily came back. In the last couple of reauthorizations, the federal gas tax collections have not kept up with the level of Program Act spending. And so the Congress has had to inject into the Highway Trust Fund general funds. So you have a mixing of bona fide federal gas tax collections mixed in with just general funds that then pay out. So that framework's not quite the same as it was then, but that at that time we were definitely a donor state. And theoretically, some would argue we're still a donor state in the sense of what we might pay in other taxes, income taxes, other taxes that Georgia would pay out to the federal government that would be considered general funds.
Any other questions for Josh? Next visit, he's going to predict how he's going to bring bipartisanship to Washington, D.C., but we'll wait on that until the next meeting. But with that, the Legislative Committee stands adjourned. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
I'll call to order the intermodal committee agenda. I'm apparently the designated survivor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and Commissioner. I would like to introduce to you Phil Peavy, Intermodal Planning and Environmental Manager, who is presenting on the Regional Transportation Development Plans. Before I hand it over to Phil, a quick note about Phil. He was named AASHTO's Transportation Management Fellow in 2020 and participated in a year-long fellowship. Of course, COVID was there, but he still did it. He gained a lot of valuable experience in the transportation sector and also interacted with a lot of key professionals across the country. So Phil's here to talk a little bit about what we're doing across the state with regard to the transportation development plans. Take it away, Phil.
Sir. All right, good afternoon, everyone. All right, so today I'm going to talk about the regional transit development plans that we're conducting across the state. So GDOT's 2020 statewide transit plan recommended strategies to address rural and regional transit needs across the state, including regional transit development plans, also known as TDPs. GDOT is implementing the strategy with the support of the Georgia Regional Commissions. The goal of the TDPs is to improve regional transit coordination, expand rural transit to service counties without public transit, and advance regional partnerships to accommodate cross-county trips. Now, these TDPs are also funded fully with FTA funds. Now, before I go too far into what is a TDP, sorry, I need to click my switch there. I do want to mention what is a regional commission. So there are 12 regional commissions in Georgia. They serve state service delivery regions, and they're governed by a board of local elected officials. The role in the region is to assist the local governments with regional planning, provide technical assistance to the cities and counties, do grant management, and then regional coordination on larger projects that include more than one county. These areas also correspond with the TIA regions in each of these areas. So what is a TDP? So regional TDP identifies transit needs and opportunities and informs future transit system investments. The TDP process assists communities in developing the transit vision and evaluating transit alternatives. TDPs are typically have a 20-year horizon, and it's recommended that they're updated every 5 years, and they're supported by GDOT through policy and planning grants. Elements included in the TDP include the public participation plan, visioning and goals, objectives, and performance measures. They look at existing conditions and systems performance. They do a needs assessment. They identify strengths and weaknesses with the system. They do additional analysis on that. They have alternative development and evaluation. And finally, they have a recommendations and an implementation plan that we provide to the regional commissions. Now, all the TDPs conduct outreach through a similar process. Each regional TDP has a project advisory committee, also known as a PAC, comprised of local and regional transportation providers, government representatives, and community organizations. PAC members have provided valuable feedback through group stakeholder interviews and PAC meetings. So in addition to the PAC meetings, we do online surveys and virtual and/or in-person meetings to get more feedback from the public and from the PACs themselves. For the 8 that we have ongoing right now, we received over 1,000 comments so far with all the regions combined. So even though we do follow the TDP guidebook that was recommended as part of the statewide transit plan and developed independently after that, we do take local information input, and it's what's used to, sorry, jumping ahead of me there, it's what's used to develop the TDPs. We also create websites for each of the TDPs that are kept up to date with current activities, and houses the final documents when the studies are completed and adopted by the regional commissions. Now, so far with the 8 studies we have ongoing right now, all the studies have completed the first round of public comment, and final draft of the TDPs will now go through a 30-day public review before it's finalized and then adopted by the regional commissions. So GDOT has worked with Georgia Mountains and Southwest Georgia regional commissions to complete their regional TDP development plans using the guidebook back in 2023. We're now working with 9 other regional commissions to complete their TDPs throughout the rest of Georgia. Now, this list is only a list of 8 of them, and this is the tentative adoption dates of those 8. We recently had, this past week, Southern Georgia, who's our 9th TDP. They just kicked off last week, and will take about a year to complete their TDP. Now, what do we get out of these TDPs? What are some of the observations and results that we provide to the regional commissions? So the recommendations will vary between the studies depending on the local input. Now, the following results are from the Southwest Georgia and Georgia Mountain regional commissions. Under transit service expansion, we had capacity recommendations. It was recommended that expanding the capacity of transit, which is generally recommended to meet current or projected demand. We look at demographic trends, including the aging population, which in Southwest Georgia Regional Commission is expected to increase demand for transit. So by investing in additional capacity, including new transit buses and trained drivers, they can ensure they meet both current and future demand and needs. Regionalization is another recommendation for the Georgia Mountains region. They had several along these lines, including consolidation of alternatives were proposed, including full region-wide consolidation among the southern counties, and then consolidation of smaller groups of 2 or 3 counties. Then under transit service enhancement, we had a span of service recommendation, This was basically a way to expand the service, and that recommendation was the addition of a Saturday or weekend service in Southwest Georgia, which would give riders more options and ensure that operational hours more closely align with employment needs of citizens in the area. Ease of use, one of the recommendations under this category was to allow for reoccurring reservations that would assist residents who have regularly scheduled events such as like medical appointments and weekly shopping trips. Under administrative tools and guidance, so for both of the regions, a marketing campaign was recommended in coordination with GDOT and area agencies that would help promote available transit options. And then technical upgrade alternatives were also identified that would improve the booking experience of some of the prospective riders. So now that we have all this information, final steps is basically to compile it all into a final TDP document for each of the regions, and we'll recommend that the regional commissions adopt these documents. Intermodal will continue to work with the regional commissions and transit agencies to implement the recommended strategies. As of FY 2025, 28 counties in Georgia still do not have transit. So our looks like my presentation is telling me I need to end. So as the long-term benefits of this program, we're looking to incorporate this information into the statewide transit plan, which we should be updated in the next year and a half. We're going to potentially assist in identifying future funding sources. It's going to provide support for transit agencies and local governments when they try to expand their transit service and their programs. And it's going to help us move toward covering the whole state with transit. So this does, as you can see, conclude my presentation. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have on these studies.
I don't see any questions. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Now we're calling together calling to order the intermodal committee.
We finished with intermodal,
Oh, I'm sorry.
and now we're going to the next committee.
I'd like to bring the Gateway Committee to order and call on Felicity Davis, our landscape architect manager, for one of my favorite presentations on one of my favorite programs, and that's the wildflowers. So please, take it away.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be able to present this to y'all to update you on our wildflower program for 2024. As stated, I'm the landscape architect manager for GDOT's State Maintenance Office. And I want to start out with giving y'all some background about the GDOT Wildflower Program, where it came from, and how it's supported. Then I'm going to go into an overview of how the Wildflower Program fits into GDOT's vegetation management, including how it fits in with some important environmental initiatives, such as preserving monarch butterflies and other pollinator insects. I'll talk about some of our accomplishments and things we've been working on for the past few years, and then I'll get to the good stuff and show you some nice blooms from this past year. It all started in 1974 with Mrs. Virginia Hollis Hand Calloway. She was the chair of the Birds and Wildflowers Committee of the Garden Club of Georgia, and she spearheaded the movement to plant and protect wildflowers on the roadsides. Later on, our former First Lady, Rosalind Carter, and Mrs. Calloway, and several other members of the Garden Club of Georgia went over to Texas to meet with Lady Bird Johnson and look at the Texas Wildflower Program and see how we could bring some of their accomplishments back to our state. And they came back and presented their ideas to the commissioner at the time, who was very excited about this program and endorsed the program. And the Garden Club of Georgia has continued to be one of our best supporters over the years, and as we've developed the Wildflower Program. In 1998, the Roadside Enhancement Fund was created, and beginning in July of 2000, GDOT's Wildflower Program became a state and federally funded program, with district offices implementing the program in assistance with assistance from the State Maintenance Office Landscape Architecture Unit. Most of the areas funded by the state were on state routes, and federal funds went to the interstate routes. In 2001, the wildflower tag came into play and was officially enshrined in law. A portion of the sales of each of these wildflower tags goes to a dedicated fund into the Roadside Enhancement Fund and continues to support the wildflower program to this day. Daffodils were added to the program in 2006. These extend the bloom season during a time of year where there's not a lot of color. They don't require a lot of maintenance. They come back year after year. And they are an introduced garden species, but they're one of those that plays well with others. So they supplement instead of competing with natives. Over the years, the program has evolved as GDOT's organization has changed. Now we use contractors to plant seeds and bulbs each year rather than district forces, but the State Maintenance Office Landscape Architecture Unit continues to coordinate with the districts for where and when we are going to be planting our wildflower plots. So speaking of maintenance, let me step back and talk a little bit about how this fits in with our vegetation maintenance on the right-of-way. This is a snapshot of right-of-way vegetation management. This is why we deal with the green stuff on the right-of-way. There are two purposes: having a functional transportation system and creating a safe environment for the traveling public. We want to make sure that we have adequate room for people to recover if they leave the roadway accidentally. We want to reduce storm damage and cleanup, improve drainage, again for safety, allow access for maintenance and inspection, and ensure visibility of warning information and instructional signs as well. These are the top priorities as we're managing vegetation on the right-of-way. We want to keep the right type of plant in the right place, essentially. We want to keep the clear zone clear of fixed objects, have turf as a safe surface for emergencies, and let our back slopes transition to our adjacent properties. We're focused on managing plant communities rather than trying to keep a static picture because that's the most cost-effective way of dealing with the green stuff. We also want to be good stewards of the environment of our state. Our highway corridors are travel ways for more than just vehicles. Plants, birds, insects, all these things travel up and down the right-of-way for good or ill. And one of the ways that GDOT is accentuating the positive of this is by signing a certificate of inclusion for coverage under the Candidate Conservation Agreement with Assurances for monarch butterflies. And I know that's a big mouthful, and so we're shortening that down in our good old-fashioned way of creating acronyms to CCAA. So what is this, and why am I talking about it in a presentation about the wildflower program? Well, this is an agreement between U.S. Fish and Wildlife and other parties, such as GOT, to deal with conservation needs of a species that they're considering listing as endangered or threatened at a federal level. We agree to voluntarily commit to do certain things to help the various species in question, with the goal that they won't have to be listed. But then we receive assurances that if they are listed, there won't be additional measures that will be imposed if they are considered to be federally endangered, which means that we get a break if that happens. Of course, insect populations have been declining, including pollinator species, and monarch butterflies are kind of one of the keystone species, and things that help the monarchs will help a lot of these other insects. Pollinators are very important for agriculture, which is how we get our food, but it's also one of Georgia's major industries. So helping the pollinator insects helps one of our major industries. Also, if or when monarch butterflies or other insects of this nature are listed as federally endangered, that could impact our operations. So this helps with a lot of different things that are coming together in our normal operations. What have we said we would do? Conservation mowing to enhance habitat, targeted herbicide treatments to get rid of problematic plants, invasive species prevention, again with herbicide and other methods, suitable set-asides, and seeding and planting to create and restore habitat. And I just want to point out, a lot of these are things that GDOT is already doing in one way or another. So by tweaking some things that we're doing a little bit, we're able to get all of these additional benefits. This shows the current corridors that are chosen for this special type of management. And this is based on some UGA research showing where the monarch butterflies go through in the fall. And we're currently looking at this to update it based on studies that have been done within the past years. This is what it looks like in practice. On those selected routes, we reduce the mowing limits to what's called safety mowing in a lot of cases, and then we mow out the back slope. We broadcast our herbicide within that safety mowing area, but do spot treatments for any invasive species. Again, things that we're already doing, activities that we're already doing on the right-of-way to keep our safe transportation system. We're just adding a little bit of a tweak so that it benefits these other areas. And so how does it relate to the CCAA with the wildflower program? Well, seeding and planting to restore and create habitat is part of that. And as we go through our operations, as we plant our beautiful flowers that bloom through the fall and in the spring and all other seasons of the year, that helps support all of these insects as well as providing a beautiful view for the traveling public. Some of the other new things that we've been doing with the program, we've been experimenting with new planting methods. A couple years back, we planted test plots where we put annual cosmos seed and perennials in the ground at the same time. Say again? Yes. That is, you'll be seeing it blooming now. It kind of has a daisy-looking flower. There's two different species that we use. One is yellow and orange flowering that blooms a little earlier and is a little shorter. One is pink and purple and white, blooms a little later, gets a little taller. So we get a nice long series of bloom out of that. And that is an annual. It only blooms once and then dies and drops at seed, whereas the perennials continue to grow and continue to develop and create less dramatic bloom but longer periods of bloom for the same planting. We planted these at the same time in test plots, and the cosmos helped the perennials get started sooner and give us more color. So then in 2023, we did all of our plots that way, and we've been fine-tuning it this year. Some plots where we saw that it was successful, we're doing that, and then other places we've gone back to that rotation. And this picture shows June of 2023, one of our test plots. So you can see this was after the cosmos had bloomed the previous year. We got a really good start on a lot of really nice color that next year. It also helps us save money because it gives us one planting and more plants in one planting. We've also done a good bit of outreach and partnering. Of course, the Garden Club of Georgia has been on one of our mainstays. As always, we've gone and spoken to a number of the different garden clubs, and they've been really excited and pleased to hear from us. The Georgia Native Plant Society, we've had some discussions with them and done some presentations to them. The Ray C. Anderson Foundation with the Ray, we're continuing our planting research and some erosion control research to stabilize slopes that have not been successful with getting a good vegetation cover. Last year in 2023, we provided a speaker for the Butterfly Symposium at the Rosalind Carter Butterfly Trail. We've established several locations there in Plains, Georgia, and we've been able to make connections with other organizations through that contact, including with the Georgia Farm Bureau and their educational wing. And so I'm going to show you a video that came out this summer. It's about 4 minutes long, so bear with me. But they did an interview and a site visit to educate Georgia's youth about what the pollinator insects on the roadside, how they benefit from the wildflower program. So I'm going to click this and it should start.
And the Georgia Association of Conservation Districts, this team of 6 helps manage all of the vegetation on all of the right-of-ways in our state, and is part of the Pollinator Initiative Project, designed to increase pollinator awareness. Okay, well, that was a shortened version of that. But you can go on YouTube and watch the whole thing. It was a really nice little presentation. You can see me in my my incognito roadside wear and hear my country accent out on the roadside, and see some of the other team members with the landscape architecture unit. And this is the the location that we went to was one of these special planting projects that we did with the Georgia Association of Conservation Districts several years ago. They had a grant from the NRCS they had some very specific requirements. We chose 15 locations at rest areas and welcome centers throughout the state, 1 acre each. We did that initial planting in 2022. One of those locations was featured in that clip on, from the Farm Monitor. And we've been encouraging people to not stop by the roadside, stop at the rest area welcome center if you want to take pictures with the wildflowers and get your nice selfie for that. And that has been something we've been continuing to plant those locations and develop them so that they stay colorful and beautiful and attract all the birds, all the bees and the butterflies and all of those good creatures. We've included we've started to use GIS mapping this year to help with more efficient planning and communication within GDOT, and we also are looking to use these for public awareness and outreach so people can know, hey, something's being planted in your location, this might be where it's going to start blooming soon, and just keep people's awareness and excitement up about this program. So now I'm going to show you some of the pictures of some of our locations. This is early March of this year, and this is a location that was planted the year before with both cosmos and perennials. And if you look at it, driving by, it doesn't look like much. But if you notice there on the side, if you look down in there, you can see those little baby plants just getting ready for the warm weather so they can pop up and start blooming. This is another location, again, mid-March, things starting to warm up, starting to get bigger, starting to just, again, get ready to get going as soon as that warm weather continues. Another location you can see, one site in March, the little plants getting started, and then in the same location in June, full of our beautiful black-eyed Susans, which were great this year. Again, this is some more, and these are perennials, so they should be coming back year after year. They may not have quite as much of a display each year, but they're going to continue to be beautiful and blooming throughout the years. But you can see May and June, they're really great display in several different locations. This is our West Point Visitor Information Center. We planted this pollinator and wildflower area specifically in 2018, I think was the first planting, and we've been able to expand it, but you can see how much bloom and how much, how much beauty we've gotten out of this at one of our welcome centers. This is another view of it. Some trees had to be removed because they were unhealthy in the background, and we've been able to expand some more of the blooming wildflowers out in that area, as well as having more trees planted eventually over time, but this gives us a great view as we're developing that. With our future plans, we just plan to keep growing, keep our wildflowers blooming on the right-of-way, keep trying to make partnerships and educate people about the importance of our natural world and what our roadsides can do for the state of Georgia. And again, keep growing and keep blooming. Just want to highlight our landscape architecture unit. If you watch that clip, you'll see all of these people, all of our landscape architects, and then our agronomist managers that assist us out in the field all as well. So thank you very much. And are there any questions?
I have
yes,
the pollinators, the insects that are pollinators. I can't remember if you said it or how you said it, but have they been designated as endangered species, or are they in the process of it, or is that something?
They are being considered for it. As I understand it, the monarch butterfly has been under consideration for several years, but there have been other species that they've considered to be of more importance. And I know that there are several bumblebee species and other wild bee species that are also starting to come under consideration. But again, they're still gathering the data, still looking at the population information and that sort of thing. But it's something that's sitting out there that, again, is a potential.
Well, to that end, my question is, assuming it does become a designation, and a lot of it's in our existing right-of-way now, would that have any impact on road projects? Would that get in the, and I don't like to use this terminology, but could it get in the way of a road project if that's a designation?
It's possible, but as I understand it, again, this is something that one of our environmental specialists might be better to speak about the details of it. But as I understand it, by signing on to the initial agreement, and if they are included under that agreement, and we continue to do the activities that we have committed to and are showing that we are continuing to do those activities, my understanding is that we are covered for that and that we don't have to do anything additional.
So what we're doing could, if that were to become an issue, this could mitigate that issue.
Exactly, exactly. And that's why in the maintenance office, we had decided that this was something that we wanted to partner with and pursue, because we saw that could be of a great benefit with that. The other thing is too, that some of these corridors, especially last year, some of them that I've personally traveled on, and so this is just anecdotal, really had a beautiful, beautiful display of fall color and wildflowers that we didn't have to plant. So we got free flowers out of it. So that's always a bonus.
Thank you.
Mr. Bone?
I have a question. How do y'all do y'all try to put, create this program in all the districts, or do you have certain areas? I mean, how do you determine, for an example, where you're going to be putting or using these programs?
Well, part of it is how much funding is available. So we
Okay.
know how many acres we can do based on the cost. But we talk it over with the individual district maintenance and enhancement coordinators and the people at the district level. We do always want to hear from citizens and, the public as to where they would like to see the wildflowers. But we also have to consider, as we're looking for locations, is it an area that's going to be under construction?
Mm-hmm.
Is it an area that's needed for emergency? So we have to balance some of those out. So we also look for locations that we know are going to be accessible, for the equipment that's needed to plant. So we absolutely love it when citizens tell us, we want to see wildflowers here. And then we'll look at it and say, okay, is it feasible? Is there enough space? Is there going to be construction or something else that's coming through that's going to be a problem for it? But we try to look for as many locations as we can, and we try to make sure that we're getting a good display in a lot of different areas, and especially in areas that are high traffic.
Well, there's no question, there's no more enjoyment in driving the interstate system and seeing wildflowers. Now, it really makes the drive very peaceful, and you see beauty, and you see all the things. And thank y'all for the great job you're doing, because, be honest, that is something that truly takes a lot of hard work to grow. I know some of these areas, but you're having a huge impact. I know. I get comments about it when in my district, when they see, places where you have this beauty of flowers and it's wild, and I would like to see more. Hopefully we can in the right-of-way systems. I mean, I know you do a lot of it in the right-of-ways in the center of the interstate systems, but maybe on the other on the outside that area where you see other things growing. But thank you for the great job. It is absolutely enjoyable to see wildflowers.
So I have one more question based on it. So if I'm driving down the road and I see a bunch of pretty wildflowers and I pull over and pick some for my wife, am I going to get in trouble?
Yeah.
Don't do that. That's very dangerous. That's very, very dangerous. We do have seed packets that you can take and plant in a place that is safe for you to get out. And I will tell you, the cosmos is tough as nails. You can plant it, and it will grow and give you beautiful flowers that you can cut.
Mr. McIntyre?
I can't speak to that.
Thank you for your presentation, very interesting. In areas that you've planted in these areas with wildflowers, is that excluded from our annual maintenance and mowing?
The wildflower program, yes, they're a separate contract with a separate funding, again, that's supported by the tag sales primarily.
But to my question, it never gets mowed.
We do have provision for mowing in the wildflower contract, and there are certain times of year when we do go and cut those back. Some of that, we rely on notification from the individual districts about when they need the mowing, because depending on the rainfall and depending on when those seeds mature, it can be unpredictable as to exactly when that happens. That's one thing that we're working on with the GIS maps, is helping us to better manage that, so that as soon as the wildflowers start to go to seed, we can come in and give them a haircut so that they drop their seed and they continue to grow wildflowers instead of starting to go more towards the grasses.
I've never had any comments about wildflowers being mowed other than clover. We have a stretch of highway that seems to always get mowed right about the time the clover is peaking.
And that's something.
Clover is not in your program?
We don't intentionally plant that as part of the wildflower program, because it does seem to come in certain areas and there are certain populations that we have. We have worked with the districts about trying to time that mowing cycle so that it comes in after the clover is starting to go to seed. But sometimes, considering how, when they start their cycle on what location of roadway, it sometimes hits at the time when it is. But we try to coordinate those so that if they are going to be mowing when it's at peak bloom, that they do a safety mow on that cycle, and then come back the next mowing cycle and cut back the seed head.
So even though you don't plant it, part of your responsibility is paying attention to where clover is and the maintenance of it?
Yes,
It's a
yes.
pollinator.
We try to work with that as much as we can.
Okay, thank
Any
you.
other questions? Mr. Brown, did you have anything? Anybody, any questions? All right, Great Waste Committee stands adjourned. Thank you very much, Ms. Davis. We appreciate your presentation.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate y'all letting me talk.
At this time, we call the Committee of the Whole in session. We will hear from Ms. Emily Fish, who is our Assistant State Maintenance Engineer / Emergency Operations, and we're going to hear an update in regards to Hurricane Debbie.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. So I just want to take a second and say that I think GDOT shines during emergency operations. So I think it's a privilege to be here to highlight all the hard work of our men and women. Their dedication to the citizens of Georgia during a disaster is just inspiring. So I'm excited to talk about it today. So just a background on Hurricane Debbie, Governor Brian Kemp declared a state of emergency on August 3rd. And extended it through August 20th. The State Operations Center at Georgia Emergency Management was activated on August 4th. Hurricane Debbie moved into the state on August 5th, and rainfall and the impacts were felt on August 5th, 6th, and 7th throughout the state. The maximum wind gust in the state was 57 miles per hour, so pretty high winds. There were historic rainfalls and flooding across southeast Georgia and major river flooding. So Effingham, Screven, Evans, and Bullock County received the majority of those historic rainfall totals. And then the Canoochee River and the Ogeechee River both saw historic cresting. So there were 1,141 employees at GDOT that directly responded to Hurricane Debbie in some capacity. They worked 55,000 plus hours, and we had 54 resource requests that were received from 12 counties. A resource request is when a county has maxed out their capacity and they need assistance from the state. So they can request assistance for us to help them during an emergency. So those resource requests were received from 12 counties. We provided 1,200 barrels, 490 sign stands, 446 road closed signs, 294 detour signs, 250 cones, 497 barricades, 4 message boards, and then road repair crews that we'll talk about later. So we also inspected 120 bridges, We moved 2,020 loads of materials, dirt or gravel, around the state. We worked on 340 off-system routes, which means they were local roads. And then all 7 districts responded and assisted in some form or capacity. They either sent supplies down or they deployed. So districts 2, 3, and 4 deployed to District 5 to assist. The first actionable resource request that we received was from Pierce County. As you can see, they had a major road washout. This road was the only route in and out to a community of about 200 citizens, and there was no alternative route. So Pierce County requested our assistance to come help temporarily repair the road, and we did so, with District 5 coming in to assist. So they were able to get this road temporarily reopened within 8 hours, which is really great because the first vehicle across, if I can make it work, was an ambulance.
Oh, wow.
So, it was an ambulance. There we go. Sorry, y'all. So the first vehicle across was an ambulance that was called in for somebody needing medical assistance.
Wow.
So it is really important to show how GDOT really does make an impact during a disaster. So I just want to speak about what the individual districts did during this hurricane. District 2 had 208 employees that were deployed in the district and in District 5. They worked in Jenkins County for 6 days, worked on 150 off-system roads, and moved 130 loads of material in that county. In Screven County, they worked for 14 days, helped temporarily repair 46 roads, and moved 584 loads of material. And this is before and after of one of the roads that they worked on in Screven County. District 3 also deployed. They worked for 9 days in Bryan County and helping repair 48 roads, and they moved 51 loads of material. And District 4 had 250 employees in district and also deploying to District 5. They worked in Appling County for 9 days, helped repair 36 roads, and moved 737 loads of material. District 5 was fully in district, working on all of their routes, and they also assisted in Jeff Davis County for 9 days. They worked on 60 roads, and they moved 418 loads of material in addition to what they were doing on their own routes. So GDOT infrastructure was also impacted. This is State Route 169 in Tattnall County. This is a bridge culvert that was washed out. So it's a picture of it actively flooding. They also worked on US 341 during the storm to help repair that. State Route 144 was also closed for 6 days, and that's a picture of State Route 144. US 17 was closed for 8 days. And then we had staff out monitoring 24/7 on site on I-16 and I-95. This is I-16 when we were watching it, and then this is I-95 when we were monitoring that. So the bridge maintenance unit and the bridge office, they inspected 120 bridges, and they had 9 teams out in the field. So they also worked on the State Route 169 Tattnall washout. So within 7 days of the washout occurring, they had designed a new and more resilient structure to replace this bridge culvert with. And then they started work, Southern Concrete started work on this bridge, the new repair, within 13 days of this happening. So pretty impressive work, and they committed to it very quickly. So the bridge will be open by October, so less than 2 months after this incident occurred, we'll have a new bridge put in place. So behind the scenes, we don't talk about this a whole lot, but what's going on not outside in the field, we have daily coordination meetings internally, sometimes 2 a day, with all departments at GDOT and all the districts. We do a 24/7 response internally and with Georgia Emergency Management in coordination with them. So we staff their State Emergency Operations Center out of GEMA, And we also have our own emergency operations center at the TMC, and we staff those 24/7 until it gets to be a manageable disaster. IT also, they get a shout out for this, for working and being so diligent during disasters. They make sure we stay up and running and all of our technology is good to go and our computers are working, and that in and of itself is an impressive feat. So, the Georgia National Guard also assisted in District 5 with delivering materials, and then we had social media campaigns going on, trying to keep all the citizens informed and followers of all of our pages. And then we also, this is from OTD, this is a map of all of the dams that breached or were overtopping that were close to or impacting state routes. So this is really just great information for us to have, and we were able to produce it and share it with other agencies so that we could kind of monitor what was going on and have some real-time information to share. Procurement also worked around the clock. They secured 150 lodging accommodations for all of these crews that deployed, and that is just amazing to do for up to 15 days worth of lodging. So impressive there. And then they also worked with us and assisting the counties on getting materials and contracts from our groups to get more material more quickly to those counties. So this is just a snippet of what we do during a storm, before, during, and after. It takes a lot of work and a lot of dedication from a lot of people. So, yeah, any questions?
Any questions from anyone?
Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
I would like to say that I live there, and I certainly appreciated all of the work. Dan lives there. Many of our counties were flooded, lost the roadways. You all were there immediately across the state, and I say thank you, and I'm sure Dan might like to also say something about the super response that we had, but also I want to thank the counties because they came together at the direction from GEMA and from GDOT, and we certainly appreciate it. And I certainly appreciated when we got US 17 open to traffic because we had to hold off because of the bridge to make sure that it was safe for people to go over. And people don't understand that. They think that if one lane is not flooded with water, it's okay to cross that bridge, but it's not until we say so from GDOT. So thank the teams for everything that was done. And Dan, you might want to add to this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It certainly was a very impressive response, not only timely, but just in, I think just how overwhelming they addressed so many problems in such a quick period of time. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? To our Deputy Commissioner, Brad Saxon, who also lives in this area.
Over 12 inches of rain at my house, for the record. But I just want to thank first Emily and her team. The coordination effort that goes into this to keep us all on point is incredible. If you do the quick math, the 1,170 odd, that's about a third of this department responded to this storm. And, you know, they are the most dedicated workforce in the state and probably this country, in my opinion. Never no qualms when we need them in times like this. So I just want to say, and the other example she gave of how everybody in this department pulls together, the procurement piece she mentioned, counties needing materials, they have the ability to piggyback off of our contracts, and we make sure our procurement folks talk to their procurement folks and make things happen. So just can't say enough. US 17, Miss Ann mentioned, that road stayed underwater for over a week. And so it was more about getting the water down and making sure that that subgrade had dried out and that we were going to have a safe road. I really wasn't worried about the bridge personally. I was worried more about the roadway on the south side of the Geechee River. But again, historic flooding. Always heard the stories down there in the 1920s are the only two times the Geechee River's been higher. And it was a hurricane in one instance and another just freak winter storm. But they always said the two rivers touched, the Savannah and the Geechee River. We were almost in that bad a shape again. So just really thankful for all the hard work of Emily's team, as I said, and everyone else in the department. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else? We are very thankful, and again, let me say to all of GDOT employees, it takes the huge team that we have and the leadership that we have to accomplish what we do, and particularly when individuals are under distress and needing that help. And you were certainly there, and thanks for all that you did likewise with your team, that you came forward. Any other remarks in regards to the Committee of the Whole and the update in regards to the hurricane? Seeing none, I would like to say to all that we will be back in for the board meeting in the morning at 9 a.m., and everyone again is invited to attend as we follow through with our board dates. With that, this committee stands adjourned.